remember last month when Sony decided to very blatantly rip off Nintendo's line of plug-and-play retro consoles? They announced the PlayStation Classic. Yeah, they even ripped off the name right here, Classic Edition. They couldn't even do that. They couldn't even come up with a different name for... Anyway, at the time, they announced 5 games with 15 more to come. The full list has since come out, and it isn't great. Let's take a look. Alright, so I have the full list here on my computer. I'm just gonna get those 5 initial games out of the way because we already knew we were getting those, so we've already talked about those games. And those were Jumpin' Flash, Final Fantasy VII, Ridge Racer Type 4, Wild Arms, and Taken 3. That and the problem started right there. It's not that these games are bad per se, but it's just they're not the best thing the PlayStation had to offer. When you think of most people's favorite games, maybe Final Fantasy VII is the one that sticks out from that list. There are a lot of games that would have been a much better cross-section of what the PlayStation 1 library was, and it was weird that this is the 5 that they went with, that they announced. This is the 5 that were supposed to get us hyped for this little console. Didn't do it for me. I'm not sure if it did it for you, but what people said at the time is that what their angle here is probably that they don't want to tip their hand and give all those games away, because then hype will spike at the day of the announcement, but then nobody cares about it anymore. So the theory, the going theory, was that they were going to slowly let us know. So like say 3 weeks from now they're going to tell us 5 more games, and then another couple weeks from that they're going to give us a few more games. Well, obviously that didn't pan out because now they just gave up the full list of games. And the other theory is that they were going to hold off on the really good stuff, again, to build up hype and anticipation. So, you know, weeks before this thing actually comes out, it comes out in early December, that's when you'd get the most excited for it. If you almost forgot about the announcement, and then all of a sudden Sony says that all of your favorite PS1 games are coming out for this thing. We thought, maybe we're being a little too optimistic, but we thought that that was the plan, to get people in stores out with their little PlayStation classics. This list is an odd one, and I'm going to go through all of these games here. So we have Battle Arena Toshinden, which is a 3D fighting game with weapons. It's very, very much like Virtua Fighter, with the exception that there are magic powers, magic moves in this game, whereas Virtua Fighter is just straight up fighting. It's not my favorite fighting game on the PlayStation. I don't think it's that many people's favorite fighting game on the PlayStation, but it is a pretty decent game. So you want fighting games, and considering the console comes with 2 controllers, you'd need some fighting games, of course. So there's that. Cool Borders 2 is a snowboarding game. It wasn't that greatly received when it first came out. Snowboarding is an odd choice for me, and I live in Canada, and I couldn't care less about snowboarding, so there's that. Destruction Derby is a game that for the longest time I didn't realize was on the PlayStation. This is a demolition derby kind of game. It's a great game. I played the hell out of it on PC, and it was one of the first games that put the destruction of the vehicle that you're using to race front and center. That was like the main selling point of the game. It wasn't until I played Carmageddon that really... Carmageddon was another game that really made that part of why the game was fun. It was seeing the destruction. To ruin your own car was really fun. So, interesting game. Again, not a top PlayStation pick in my book, but I was happy to see that there, because it's one, I didn't have a PlayStation growing up. I'm now really getting into the PlayStation library, so it was great to see some names there that I actually had some experience with. And this goes double for the next game in the list. Grand Theft Auto, the very first Grand Theft Auto. I was a massive fan of GTA, the original GTA, on PC, not so much on the PlayStation. It wasn't the best version of that game, but I'm a massive fan of the original GTA. To give you an idea, when I was a kid and this game came out, I would write GTA fan fiction, just to give you an idea of how much I was into this game. So again, I don't think it's anyone's top pick for best PlayStation game, but I was very happy to see that there. It makes a lot of sense for them to put GTA on this thing because the Grand Theft Auto brand is very strong. So I don't think the original GTA is anyone's... It's not many people's favorites if you're younger than, let's say, 30, but I'm very glad to see that there. It's still not gonna make me buy it, but I'm glad it's there. So we also have Intelligent Qube, which is a puzzle game, things like that. puzzle games on consoles, they're not really my thing. So, not much to say about that one. Metal Gear Solid, that's one of the games that we all kind of knew were going to be out there. And, well, it is there. It's a must-have for the PlayStation. So now, finally, we're getting to games that you absolutely need to have on the PlayStation. Out of the ones that they originally announced, I would say Final Fantasy VII is alongside Metal Gear Solid as one of the most-have the most-have games for the system. And we're some 10 games in now, and there's 2 that I would say, yeah, those absolutely need to be in this collection. Not a good sign. Mr. Driller, another puzzle game. Again, puzzle games to me feel more at home on a portable. I don't want to sit down on my couch in front of my TV to play a puzzle game. So for that reason, I'm out. Next up, we have Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, a 2D adventure game that, again, I was more familiar with the PC version of that game. It's kind of like a Prince of Persia meets Heart of Darkness. I like games like that. My brother he's in love with games like that. I'm not sure if Oddworld was one of his favorites. Again, not something that would, when I think of PlayStation, that's not one of the games that comes to mind, but I was happy to see that there. Then we have Rayman, a classic platformer that, again, had to be on this collection. For my money, it makes a lot of sense. The same goes for Resident Evil, and this is the director's cut. This game, it was just like Metal Gear Solid. It was one of the games that we pretty much knew were going to be included here. You need Resident Evil with this system. Resident Evil was the game that pretty much kickstarted the survivor horror genre. It wasn't the first one, but it was one of the ones that really propelled that genre to the forefront of video games. So it makes a lot of sense. Revelations Persona, which is the first of the Persona series. I'm not a fan of the Persona series at all, and I don't think this one was one that PlayStation fans really dug back then. From my recollection, this series did not pick up until many, many years later. So this is, to me, is kind of like them including Grand Theft Auto. It's like, hey, you guys know this game, right? This is where it started kind of thing. Makes sense, but I would have preferred, there's a bunch of other games that I would rather have seen in this list. Then we have Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, which is a Tetris-like puzzle game. I guess it's more like Dr. Mario, really, with Street Fighter and Darkstalkers characters. I'm not a huge fan of Street Fighter or Darkstalkers or Dr. Mario-like puzzle games. Again, I like Dr. Mario, but that's about it. I like Tetris, but that's the one I like. So, and again, I don't want to sit in front of my TV to play anything like Tetris. So, I'm sure there's a lot of Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo fans out there, but I'm not one of them. And I don't think that's a system seller. Then we have Syphon Filter, which is a less silly, Americanized Metal Gear Solid. When it came to these action, stealthy, sort of I wouldn't call it a shooter per se, you shoot people, but it's not really a shooter. So let's say stealth adventure game. It's like I said, it's the American take on the Metal Gear thing, but I don't think anybody... Did you love Syphon Filter? Because all of my friends were loyal to Metal Gear Solid. So Syphon Filter, by its own merit, is a pretty decent game. But, I mean, and that's the thing. If you're getting Metal Gear Solid on this collection, I don't think anybody would be like, nah, I'd rather play Syphon Filter. That's just me. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. We got Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, which is a first-person shooter, the only one in the list. It's an odd choice for me. I played a lot of Rainbow Six on the computer way back in the day, the original one. I'm a huge Tom Clancy fan, so when I found out there's a Rainbow Six game, I was all about it. I read the book before I knew there was a game. So first-person shooters on the console, it's tricky enough as is, and without analogs, because as you remember, this console will ship with 2 non-DualShock controllers. No analogs. I am not ever going to play a first-person shooter on a D-pad. That's just not happening. And then finally we have Twisted Metal, which is a vehicular combat game. It's the first one, which is, again, an odd choice because the second one is the one that everybody loves. And it's weird because they went with things like Cool Borders 2 and Tekken 3 and Final Fantasy VII and Ridge Racer Type 4. So it's not like they were married to only putting out the first game in a series. It's odd to me that they would go with the first Twisted Metal. I wonder if it's a licensing issue. that went on there. So this list is not great, and if you look around on the internet, people are not that happy with it. There's like a handful of these games that are system sellers, but everything else is kind of like there's a lot of bargain bin quality type stuff here. I don't want to sound mean, but right now there's a lot of games that I wish were on this thing and are nowhere to be seen. Like Wipeout. Wipeout is, when I think PlayStation, I think Wipeout. That was one of the games that really it was, by 1995 standards, it was graphically very dazzling. It's really odd to me that they omitted that one. Spyro the Dragon, also an odd one to omit, considering one, it's a PS1 classic, and two, it's made by Insomniac, who it's a publishing company who has a great relationship with Sony. They just put out Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4, so I have to assume they have a pretty decent working relationship with Sony. I wonder how come it's not on here. It's kind of weird. Both Crash Bandicoot and Crash Team Racing are absent from this list. I would have put money that you'd see either one or both of these games on this list. They're not here. I wonder why. Especially when you consider that Crash is effectively the PlayStation mascot. So, really odd omission. Symphony of the Night. This one was one of the few that I was like, they're gonna put Symphony of the Night. Symphony of the Night is one of the defining games on the PlayStation. Is by far my favorite PlayStation game. It's the PlayStation game I played the absolute most. Very, very odd that it's not included here. I have to assume it's Konami's fault. I'm gonna assume it's any sort of mishandling of the Castlevania property. It's very safe to assume Konami was just being a dick. What else? Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk, I mentioned earlier, it was one of the defining games on the PlayStation. It was one of the games that I also played the hell out of, and I'm thinking it's really weird that they didn't include that. But yeah, those are the games that I would like to have seen on this. They seem to me like better options than a lot of the things that were eventually included on this list. Now, what about you? What do you think? Are you happy with this list? I looked around and I didn't see many people who were happy with this. Even the most optimistic gamers in my crowd were pretty underwhelmed by this list. But maybe you think differently. Let me know in the comments down below. As always, follow me on social media. I'm very active over there. I post a lot of pictures from behind the scenes and photos of my collections and things like that. It might be your cup of tea. As always, let me know where you're from. I'm always very curious to find out where you're watching these videos from. And that's all the time I have for today. I'm Izzy, and I'm done.